What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Comically Boston Breakdown episode. I'm your host, Big Cam, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, titled Through the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And Through the Valley, Episode 2, is a heartbreaking but also incredibly exciting episode. For people of the games, you might know what heartbreak is coming, and for people that only know the show, they have no idea what's coming. But also for people that know the games, there's some elements in this episode that aren't in the games at all, so it's kind of exciting for you to be like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? And I kind of enjoy how they did it differently, although there is a few things that I was like, ah man, it would have been a great little detail if they had that. But we'll talk about it as we go through and point out all the little Easter eggs as I'm recapping this episode and breaking down everything that happened. But let's get right on into it, shall we? Coming off of last week's episode, Joel saving Ellie from Seth's homophobic dyke jokes, and not really a joke, he just was like, hey, this is a family event, what the hell are you bitches doing? And Ellie did not need Joel's fucking help. And Abby and her friends arrived outside of Jackson, but there was also fungus in the pipe that was reaching out. So, ooh, things could be getting a little hectic this episode. Also, then they showed us a recap and the I saved her moment with Gail, and Gail isn't in this episode, and I'm hoping we see more of her. Then we get the beautiful intro, the beam, 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 beam. God, I would love to. What is he playing? A ukulele? A little guitar? I would love to get one of those. I've been saving up, actually. I want to get a guitar and learn how to play guitar. Mostly because of Gustavo and that little... But you guys get the point. We open this episode on Abby and the alarm scene from the game. And it's the same alarm, the pew, pew, pew. And she's walking down a hall, and in the game, this is how like we start with Abby, and she runs down the hall and runs into this room, and then she wakes up from her nightmare. In the show, an older Abby is talking to her younger self, the same outfit that the younger self runs down the alarmed hallway in the game. Older Abby to her younger self says, he's dead. Don't go in there. His brains are on the floor. And younger Abby's like, you're lying, I don't believe you. And walks in, and older Abby just stands there and cries because she knows what younger Abby's about to see. And this is when Abby wakes up from her nightmare. And this is like her nightmare that she's having over and over again, even 5 years later after her father's death. And clearly it's still on her mind because all she can think about is Joel and revenge, getting him and taking out the person that took everything from you. You know what I mean? Like, violence is not the answer, but it is to these characters. Abby wakes up from her nightmare, and her friends and her are at a mansion outside of Jackson, or a lodge, or shelter, whatever they call it. I'm just going to keep calling it a mansion. But the mansion outside of Jackson with her friends, Owen, Manny, Nora, Mel, and Abby. And they are scoping out Jackson with binoculars, and they're like, oh shit, that's a lot bigger town than it looked like at night. Abby proposes that they take one of their patrols and, you know, tie him up and question him and make him tell them where Joel is. And they're like, so what if they don't tell, you know, like, what if they don't tell him? And Abby's like, oh, I'm gonna fucking beat it out of him. But, you know, the rest of these people are just like, we're just here to hurt Joel. We don't want to hurt anyone else, right? Like, and they don't even really want to hurt Joel. They're just here for Abby, right? Like, and they decided to come with her as friends, but Abby is dead set on this Joel plan, and Owen's like, hey, I got a plan, but I need some time to mull it over. And Abby's like, okay, we'll buy you some time. And she goes out on the first watch in a bad snowstorm. It's super cold. But we hear Owen tell the rest of the team that his real plan is to convince her to go back, or the only thing dying out here will be all of them. And, you know, it's not wrong. But this is also different from the game. In the game, Owen and Abby go out on a walk alone and have this little moment before Owen tells us that him and Mel are pregnant, and he's, you know, been fucking Mel, and Mel's pregnant. No mention of this at all in this show. At least maybe they're saving this for a later moment. I don't know. But this little part in the game was important to me because I was like, it sets the tone of like, sure, Owen's with Mel, but Owen and Abby also have this little fire. And it also kind of sets up that weird little triangle of relationship with Ellie, Dina, and Jesse, right? With the Mel, Abby, and, you know, the two girls and a dude. It's the parallels between the characters in the game are crazy, but you don't get to see the parallels in the game until after you've already finished all of it, right? Because in the moment when you're first playing it, you're just angry because you're like, where's Joel? Like, why am I playing as Ellie and not Joel? All first game you were playing as Joel, and all of a sudden you're Ellie, you're like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden you're Abby, and you're like, what is going on here? But still one of the best games of all time. If you haven't, go check it out. But after Abby goes out on her freezing cold patrol by herself, you know, just to keep watch, and she's only supposed to be out there for an hour, but she goes out in the cold, and then we cut over to Ellie waking up with Jesse knocking at her door, and this is the opening scene with Ellie in the game that we get. And the only scene that I think we get before this is Joel, instead of in the show, he's talking to Gail the therapist about he saved her. In the game, it opens on Joel telling Tommy what he did and how he saved her, and cleaning the guitar before he puts it on his back, and we then just ride a horse as Joel into town before we then cut to Ellie the morning after this dance, which we don't see the dance sequence until much, much later in the game. So, you know, they reordering things for the show rather than the way that the game worked. And I think it's for the better because it's, you know, in the game we're playing as these characters and unfolding the narrative as we play. The show needs to get to that narrative a little bit quicker and show us what's going on as an audience rather than as the player. But so Jesse comes to wake up Ellie, and at the end of the last episode, we saw Joel was sitting on his porch with the guitar, and he said he was going to replace the strings for her. So, you know, he's sitting on the porch with the guitar, and I thought they had maybe cut this scene out from the game, because in the game we see them talk on the porch, and it's like their last conversation, if you would. You know, spoilers for this episode and show, but if you're here, you want the spoilers, I guess. But sorry if you didn't. But you know, that would be their last conversation in the game, but maybe they're saving this moment for later in the season. In the last episode, though, we saw Ellie walk right by Joel standing on his porch, but she must have gone and talked to him because the guitar is in her room when Jesse's waking her up in the morning. Jesse calls her out and goes, "You kissed Dina last night?" Right, because she thinks he's like, "Hey, I heard you had a hell of a night last night." And he's talking about Joel punching Seth in the argument with Joel. And Ellie goes, "She kissed me. I didn't mean to. She made a move." And he's like, "Wait, whoa, you kissed Dina? We've been broken up a week and you kissed her? You're already making a move?" And she's like, "Oh, man." And he goes, "I'm just kidding. I don't care." And she's like, "Oh, you're a jerk." And she goes to shut the door on him. And he's like, "That is pretty fucked up, though." And I'm like, I love Jesse so much. I love Jesse in the game. I love young Mazzino in the show. Jesse's a great character. Jesse then tells Ellie as they're walking into Jackson that one of their guys out on patrol found a pile of like 7 or so frozen dead infected and didn't think anything of it until 30 more infected from underneath them poured out and started running at them. And they hightailed it back to Jackson and then sent out a squad to take out the infected, which is smart of them. You know, not all of them are immune like Ellie. Jesse says now they don't know how many are under the snow. Could be 30, maybe thousands. And Ellie's like, "No way, 1,000? You're crazy." And Jesse goes, "Certainty masquerading as knowledge. Very Ellie of you." And I was like, oh my god, it is very Ellie of her. And then she goes, "Suck my dick." And I was like, oh my god, even more Ellie of her. Anybody that thinks that Bella Ramsey is not Ellie, it doesn't know what they're talking about. They're fucking retarded if they think that her personality and everything that comes out of her mouth isn't Ellie. You know, so what if her face doesn't look like the game? It's not supposed to. Joel doesn't look like Pedro Pascal in the game. Cry me a river. We then hear Ellie say to Jesse, "Hey, no offense, I would like to go out with Joel today." And he's like, "What the hell? What do you mean you want to go out with Joel? Last time I checked, you guys were fighting." And she's like, "Listen, stop fucking worrying about me and Joel. Like, he's gonna be him, I'm gonna be me, and that's never gonna change, but you guys shouldn't worry about me and him. And she goes, and if it's all the same to you, I would like to go out with Joel, like a daddy-daughter day. So Joel and Ellie are all good now? Like, we gotta cut back to that conversation on the porch. What conversation did they have between last episode and now that all of a sudden they're good? Because the last time we saw them, they were fighting, and then she walked right past him, not wanting anything to do with him. But we find out that Joel wanted to go out with Ellie, but he said, let Ellie sleep, and he went out with Dina, his other daughter figure. Jesse and Ellie go to see Maria, and they walk in to see Tommy addressing the town on what they're going to do in emergencies. And he says that the one place they're not going to want to be is on the main street if anything ever breached and they ever got into their fenced-in Jackson. And of course, he says, you won't want to be on the main street. Well, that will be the worst place to be. And of course, that's right where Tommy finds himself later in this episode, on Main Street, when shit goes sideways. We then see Maria makes Ellie get an apology from Seth for what he said last night. Seth kind of is like, I'm sorry, and I was drinking a lot last night. And she goes, oh, I'm sure people that drink a lot never say anything that they ever think before. And he's like, you're right. I should have never thought it, never felt it, I'm sorry. And the apology that she gets from Seth in the show does feel a little bit more sincere than the apology in the game. The Seth in the game I hated. But they did cut out the line of Bigg sandwiches from the show. And I loved the Bigg sandwich line from the game. Ellie wasn't having any of his apology. And then Jesse ends up with the Bigg sandwiches. The Bigg steak sandwiches. Which is, definitely hard to come by in this post-apocalypse. You know what I mean? But then we see Jesse and Ellie go out on patrol. And it was different from the game because Ellie and Dina, after that night of them going out and kissing, and we find out what happened, right? And they kissed. We don't see that dance and that kiss till much later in the game, but we hear more about it because Ellie and Dina are on patrol, and we see this whole patrol, and we play as this whole patrol on horseback, finding infected, much like the first episode where Ellie and Dina were on patrol together and they found the bear. In the game, they find a moose, they find infected in the store, right? It's similar to the show, but they changed things just a little bit. So now, instead of Ellie and Dina on patrol out in the snowstorm right now, it is Jesse and Ellie. We then cut over to Abby freezing her butt off on the side of this mountain, which was real, right? None of this is green screen. You could tell because a lot of the shots look like they're all caught in camera, right? There's no replacements of backgrounds. There's no, and it leaves them the opportunity to, when there is moments where they need VFX, they can dive all their attention on that one part, and it looks all the better for it. I thought this episode looked really, really good, even though there was a fucking blizzard going on the entire time, and a real blizzard, not fake snow that they're making snow. They filmed in a real blizzard, which is gnarly. But as Abby is freezing her ass off on the side of this mountain, she sees a patrol and decides to run after them. And the storm is getting really bad, so Tommy calls back all the patrols to Jackson. Jesse and Ellie are too far out, so they have to find a spot of shelter nearby. And it's a 7-Eleven full of weed. And in the game, Dina and Ellie find a library full of weed, and this is Eugene's stash in the game. But we find out that this 7-Eleven was Eugene's place. But interesting little note, when Jesse says, I used to do runs with Eugene, and he showed me this place back in the day, and he said don't tell anybody about it because Maria wouldn't like that his farming of weed project that he had going on in this 7-Eleven. But this makes sense why Eugene always had weed for Gail. But Ellie's face when Jesse goes, oh, this was Eugene's place, and Ellie's face kind of freezes and shook for a second when she hears Eugene's name. So that flashback of Eugene episode, whether it's next week or episode 6 or whenever it happens, it's going to be pivotal towards Ellie and Joel's story. I have a feeling, I didn't think they were going to go this route, but now after seeing Ellie's face in this episode, I have a feeling that Eugene in the game had a stroke and died of old age. I'm thinking in the show, we already know that Joel killed him, but why? I thought maybe he got infected and Joel put him down because he got bit. I'm thinking now that Eugene was a Firefly and maybe put together that Joel was the one that wiped out all the Fireflies and protected Ellie, and maybe Eugene finds out Ellie's secret, and to keep Ellie's secret more close-lipped, Joel kills him. I don't know if that's true, but that's my prediction for when that flashback episode comes up. We then see that Ellie finds Eugene's Firefly medallion, so Eugene was a Firefly, and Jesse thinks he was in Vietnam back in the day, and it's such a shame to make it through the war and through all of this, infected pandemic, and to go out getting put down by Joel, is how he put it, like he's an animal, or probably more so towards them, like an infected. Ugh. But we then see Abby is still following the patrol when she loses them a little bit, and she goes, all right, I gotta get down to where they were. And she accidentally, she goes to just slide down gracefully down this hill, and it's not so graceful. She slides down, loses her gun, falls into a mass frozen grave. And this is terrifying. All of a sudden you're like, oh no, this is bad. And it's gross because it's oh, she sees a hand and it's frozen out of the snow, and there's at least 10 to 15 bodies frozen on the top level of this snow, and then everything else just covered by a ton of snow because they're in the middle of goddamn winter. But one of the clickers that's frozen in the snow starts to turn, and Abby's like, oh boy, and she takes off running. And that one that was turning shrinks into the snow as mass amounts of infected start crawling up from underneath. So this frozen layer of dead infected on the top, all of the other infected are using that as insulation from the cold, and all of the other infected are still alive underneath the snow. Much like last season when they were underground in Kansas, I want to say, wherever Henry and Sam were, and we saw that bloater and all those people came up from underground and killed all those people we saw last season. So we see that the fungus has much more of a map, right? And they all communicate, and the fungus are smart, and they're not just random one-off clickers and one-off stalkers and runners and stuff like that from the game that you encounter along the way. This horde danger is crazy, that isn't in the game really at all. Maybe once or twice we fight a horde. This horde scene in this episode is nuts. So we see poor Abby hightailing it as thousands of infected are chasing after her. Just like Jesse said, thousands could be under the ground. And Ellie didn't believe him, but oh boy was he right. And so she's running, and they're right behind her, and she jumps up onto a wall and jumps over the fence, and then she's looking for a way out, and they close a fence in on her. And this whole sequence in the game is spit right out of the game into the show, and it is so crazy. They're all pushing up on the fence, and the shot of an infected's hand trying to push through the fence, and it's cutting his hand, but he doesn't care. He's just trying to get this human. And poor Abby's on the other side of this before it collapses down and makes it even more claustrophobic, and she has to start crawling. And I was there was one detail in this as she's crawling through this fence. There's one detail in the game that they didn't do for the show, and in the game, as she's crawling, one of the infected grab her hat off her head and their hand across her face, and she's disgusted as the rest of these hands are trying to grab her and stuff before that infected gets on top of her. And then someone out of nowhere comes to save her, and who saves her from this infected but Joel? What? In the game, this blew my mind because I was, hyperventilating from running from these friggin' infected, and finally I get to safety, and it's this guy saving me, and it's Joel. The guy that Abby's after is the guy who saves her. So maybe she'll have second thoughts. Yeah, probably not. But so in the show, they didn't have that shot of the infected taking off her hat, I believe, because it was really 5 degrees outside or whatever temperature it was in I want to say Vancouver where they were filming this, and poor Katlin Deever was probably really freaking cold on the side of this mountain, because they were really filming in a real blizzard. So Joel saves Abby, and she's reeling and catching her breath from almost dying, and all of a sudden Dina from down below goes, Joel, Joel, and Abby hears Joel's voice, or Joel's name, and puts two and two together that the guy she's looking for is the one that just saved her. And it's almost shot for shot, this entire conversation and everything that goes down with Abby getting saved. But it's Joel and Tommy in the game instead of Joel and Dina. So Dina's sitting there now, and she's like, what the fuck? Where do we go? Where did you come from? Who are you? And I'm like, all right, Isabella, I love you. But as Dina's questioning her, Abby says, my friends are in the lodge up the hill at the mansion. Joel's like, do they have weapons? Good, we'll need them. So they take off running away from the infected on the horseback, and Joel's got Abby on the back. So fucking Abby and Joel are together in this moment. And it's like, oh my God. If only you knew what was coming. We then cut back to Jackson, to Tommy finding out that all of the patrols are back or in shelter except for Joel and Dina. They haven't heard back. And he starts to freak out a bit, and he takes the mic. He's like, Joel, fucking answer the radio! And he's like, all right, every 10 minutes, you better keep calling, or every minute, he says, every minute, or every 10 seconds, I think he says. He goes, every 10 seconds, you keep dialing, so the poor girl's in a wheelchair just, on the radio, just calling in, trying to get a hold of these people in a massive snowstorm. We then cut back over to Ellie and Jesse in this weed den 7-Eleven, and Ellie puts on the gas mask bong that Eugene had made, and this gas mask bong is from the game, but she puts it on and says, oh, I'm taking it. And Jesse's like, no, you're not. And she goes, oh, yes, I am, and I'm taking as much weed as I can fit into my pack. So she takes the gas mask bong and a bunch of weed. No, not looking for supplies, she's looking for the weed. She's like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And Jesse's like, you're not taking any of that. And she's like, listen, we know you're all going to be running Jackson one day, but today is not that day, as she keeps trying to put weed in her bag. But as this is happening, Jesse gets the radio starts going off, and we hear that Joel and Dina haven't heard back from, and are you guys near the copper mine? And he's like, okay, I guess we have to go find him, so Jesse and Ellie take off looking for Joel, but they have to split up, and they're going around the copper mine like an oval, and they're going to meet in the middle. So I wonder who will find Joel and Dina first. So as Jesse and Ellie are out going to look for Joel and Dina, a guy back in Jackson hits a pipe with a pickaxe, and he rips the pipe out, and we see that fungus in the pipe starts moving, and this guy triggered more infected towards Jackson. So we see more infected start pouring out of this ground hole where they initially came from, chasing after Abby. So Abby triggered them, and then this guy in Jackson triggered them towards Jackson. And it's wild because Joel and Dina are hauling ass from the infected, and thousands of them are running after them. But because that guy triggered the fungus, they all kind of split off towards Jackson. And this is definitely different from the game, because we see, Tommy and Joel and Abby riding horseback in the game, and they ride into the fenced-in area of the mansion where they go to Abby's friends, and there's a horde, but not so many that they couldn't handle it. So they shut the gate, the horde runs up, and then they throw a Molotov, and then they shoot the rest of them. So they kill the horde that was after them, and then they go into the house to have what happens in the house go on in the game. But in the show, the horde splits off towards Jackson, and that's what happens. And the poor guy in the watchtower at Jackson sees a couple of thousand infected running towards him, and he's like, Tommy? Tommy! And ring the bell, goddammit! Right, so he starts freaking out, ringing the bell. The town gets triggered into emergency, and Jackson's plans are basements for the old and the children, and to the roofs for the guns, right? So they feel like they can get shots off from the roof, and it's going to take the infected a little bit of extra time to get up to the roof level, and hopefully with the guns on the roof, they go to the roof rather than to the basement where the children and the people that can't defend themselves are, you know what I mean? So, not a bad plan, and they got the people on the walls, so, they have a decent plan, but it was always just a drill before this, and like Jesse said earlier in the episode, it's all a drill unless something really happens, and then it's not. And Maria's like, yeah, pretty much, you know? It's all a drill until something goes wrong, and then it's for real. But as they're, you know, they're prepping the town, they get prepped for, you know, this incoming infected wall coming at them pretty quickly. And then Tommy's on the wall as they brace, as infected run full speed into this wall and just slam into this wall. So kudos to the stunt people, because, you know, that couldn't be done in VFX. And it looks so real of them in their, you know, and it's crazy because this horde looks so good, and you're struggling to go, that one's CGI, this one's real, because they do have real people with prosthetics, and then they also have CGI people filling out the crowd. So it's like, and they match the real people, so it's really hard to tell what's a fake person, what's a real person in this little shot of sequence where you see all these, the horde of infected. But the Wall's plan is they drop barrels into like the field where all the infected are running at the wall, and then they shoot the barrels and then throw a torch and ignite it in a big, you know, everything goes on fire as they, you know, a big huge napalm these guys almost, right? Like almost like an airstrike outside this place. But there's now just a huge firewall outside of Jackson, doing a pretty damn good job of defending Jackson, actually, you know, in taking out a good amount of these infected and keeping them outside of the walls of Jackson. But Joel sees the fires outside Jackson, and he's like, I gotta go back. And Abby's like, we're right up the hill. I can get you blankets. We gotta go there. My friends can help you fight. And Joel's like, all right, we gotta do it fast. So Abby's, you know, doing anything she can to get Joel, just get him. She couldn't believe she found him, and all of a sudden he's saving her. And then she's bringing them right to where she wants him. You know what I mean? Like, things couldn't have gone better for Abby in this sense. Like, a second ago she was dying, all of a sudden everything's going right for her. We then see the infected horde is smart and are running around, and we then see a big old bloater. Oh no, what is this bloater doing? Oh no. So this big old bloater, right, like they're doing well just defending the infected runners, but when the bloater comes up to the wall, the bloater breaches in, and infected start to pour into the town, and Tommy puts on a flamethrower and starts flamethrowing an infected, and the other torch guys are cowards and run, and the infected start to overrun Jackson, and Maria starts to target a bloater from the roof, and the bloater sees like who's shooting her, or senses where the shots are coming, and he starts to head towards Maria in this roof, and Tommy's like, no, you know, that Frank Castle, no, sorry, Punisher. So Tommy starts running in like the Punisher, and he starts shooting at it, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey, follow me! So he gets the bloater's attention for Maria, so it doesn't go after Maria. But Tommy gets the thing running after him, and Tommy mistakenly runs himself into a corner, and all he has is the flamethrower to flamethrower the bloater, but it's not going down, and then Tommy runs out of fuel and sits down. But I have a whole clip of what happens here.
Fuck!
So Tommy, running from this thing, just torches it, and it eventually drops like a well-done steak. You know what I mean? Like, just, it's so crispy and cooked by the time it gets up to Tommy, and it just collapsed. But I was like, that's how Tommy this badass from the game is going out. He's just sitting in a corner, panting as this thing, you know, would have killed him, but just drops dead in front of him. Thank God no one was around to see Tommy shit in his pants. But we were, you know, so I was sitting there like, Tommy, if the gas ran out of thing, you're telling me he wouldn't have took off the thing and tried to hit the goddamn bloater with it, or hit him with the thing, or something, punch it, stab it, nothing? You're telling me he doesn't have a knife in his pocket? Like, no, I just was like, all right, I get the point. This is kind of like how bloaters die in the game sometimes. You throw 12 Molotov cocktails at it and you're running away from it and it's making all these noises and it's burning and like crispy and it's now black and it used to be like fleshy colored, and then all of a sudden it gets right up on you and you shoot it one time and it dies, but it dies slowly and like collapses in front of you, and it's scary, man. This game, like, if you play the no return, like just quick play version of The Last of Us, like the new like mini game type thing they came out with, it can get terrifying. It really can. Like, especially the stalkers that jump out of nowhere and grab you, and then you gotta like just spam buttons to get them off you. Like, nah. But after the bloater drops, Tommy goes back to defending the town and back on Main Street where the infected are overrunning everything. But then we see attack dogs start killing infected. So maybe the town's got a little second chance because these attack dogs came running out. We then see that Abby, Dina, and Joel make it back to the mansion with Abby's friends, and Dina sees the WLF wolf patches that are on their bags, and she's a little bit frostbite on her wrist, and it's like, oh no, is Dina gonna be alright? And Joel's like, grab everything, we're leaving in 3 minutes. And Abby starts to introduce herself and her friends, but he doesn't care about any of that. He's like radiant into Jackson because he's concerned about Jackson and like his brother there and everything going on. He's like, all right, you guys need help, we could come. And he wanted to turn around, but you know, he could have died in the cold and the snow, but poor Dina really needed some warmth soon, and or she would have lost her hand from frostbite. Like, if she had a little frostbite on her wrist, that's no. I don't want frostbite on nobody. But so Abby starts to introduce herself and her team, and she's like, that's Dina you're helping with the frostbite there, and he's Joel. And everybody in the room kind of gets tense because they know that Joel is the guy that they were here for. And Manny grabs Dina at gunpoint. And I'm like, what? Manny, what are you doing? And this is different from the game a little bit. It plays out mostly the same, but in the game, because it's Joel and Tommy, it plays out so much more like crazy, you know, like it's so much more heartbreaking in the game. But with Dina at gunpoint, Abby says, if you cooperate, she won't get hurt. And Joel's like, if you want to rob us, just rob us. And Abby's like, do we look like raiders? And he says, no. And she says, what do we look like? And he says, military? Fireflies? And she says, used to be. Haven't you heard? There aren't any more fireflies. They're all gone. I wonder why. And then they put Dina to sleep with anesthesia, which is a little bit better for the character in the game because Tommy just gets knocked out. You know, he just punched in the face with the butt of the gun and he gets knocked out, where Dina gets peacefully put to sleep with anesthesia. But she also had a little bit of frostbite. So poor Dina, we didn't want to see her get hurt. But Abby asks Joel, where was the last place you saw the fireflies? He says, Salt Lake. And she says, at least you're honest. And Joel says, I saved your life, which he did just save her from the clickers. But she says, what life? And shoots him with the shotgun in his leg. And then goes tourniquet his leg because she doesn't want him to die bleeding out immediately. She wants him to suffer. And she says, you're tough. I guess you have to be to kill all those people. And we learn that he killed 18 soldiers and 1 doctor. And the doctor was her dad. And she says that the nurses said you barely even looked at him when you killed him. Well, I looked at him. I saw his brains on the floor. I was 19 when she saw her father dead. So now 5 years later, Abby is 24 in this moment in time. But she says that the WLF have a code in that they don't kill people that can't defend themselves. But she is going to kill Joel. And then she turns and sees a golf bag. People from the game are already ready for, you know, like, ugh, oh boy. Then Abby goes to give some speech and Joel says, shut the fuck up and do it already. And this is a great clip.
Oh, it's funny. I have waited
No,
so...
just shut the fuck up and do it already.
Ooh, so Joel's got no time for her bullshit, and in the game it's a little bit different. He's like, listen, whatever speech you got rehearsed, just get on with it already. You know, like, I like this one. Shut the fuck up and do it already. You know, like, oof. Abby's going over to that golf bag and she says, you stupid old man, you don't get to rush this. And then she starts golf clubbing him in his already shot leg. Ooh, which is brutal. In the game, she hits him in the head with the golf club and we cut away, but she hits him in the leg and it's like, ooh, terrible. Ellie then is riding up to the mansion. She sees back the same thing that Joel saw with Jackson on fire, but she sees the horse tracks going up to the mansion. So she takes off towards the house and she walks into the house and she's hearing Abby punching Joel and Owen's trying to make her stop and pleading with her, and Nora's face and Tati Gabriel, who is going to be in the next Naughty Dog game, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, and that's probably why she has a bald head here. But Tati Gabriel, who is playing Nora, and like just the look on her face as she's shocked by Abby's brutality as she's beating this man, and Owen's pleading with Abby to stop and that Joel's had enough, and Ellie just hears screaming. And in the games we hear Joel's cries, ah, ah, every time he's hit with the golf club. But in the show, we're hearing Abby's screams as she's punching him and she's going, ah, ah, and he's just like, you know, silence, right? Like at this point he's already numb from the pain, and you know, so the screaming we hear is of Abby's punching. And then Ellie comes rushing in and she cuts Manny. So the character in the game she cuts is not Manny, it's a separate character. So maybe that character that gets cut in the game is getting merged with Manny's character for the show. And if so, that's good for a later moment that will come back for Ellie. But in the game, Manny's climactic moment comes much later with a moment with Tommy and Abby. So who knows how the rest of the season and season 3 will play out as the rest of this game goes, because the rest of the game is quite long and we already know that season 3 of The Last of Us is green-lit, so we know that they must be adapting this part 2 of the game into multiple seasons, maybe even 3 seasons. But here's the clip here of Ellie coming in and slicing Manny and then having to watch Joel's death.
It's enough!
Someone fucking up!
Joel, get up. Joel, get up. Joel, fucking get up.
End it.
Joel, get up. Fucking get up. Get up. No. Please don't do it, please. Please don't. Please don't. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. You're gonna die. You're all gonna fucking die.
Oof, what a heartbreaking moment for Joel and Ellie as she rushes in and cuts Manny, and Manny's like, I'm gonna fucking kill this bitch. And that's Danny Ramirez, who just played Joaquin Torres in Captain America Brave New World. So he's like a hero in that, and he's a pendejo in this fucking woo. Oh god, I love Manny from the game, but this moment where he kicks Ellie and we hear a break in her chest as like he could have shattered her sternum, but she's on the ground, you know, yelling, Joel, fucking get up! And Joel, like, hand starts to twitch and he tries to get up, and this is pretty much shot for shot from the game as Pedro's bloody face on the ground versus Joel's bloody face from the game. And oh man, and oh, poor Ellie in the game is heartbreaking too, but heartbreaking in the show. In the game, she gets knocked out and wakes up later to find Jesse and Dina finding Tommy, Ellie, and Joel's bodies all knocked out in this house. But in this version, it's just Dina's knocked out conscious from the anesthesia, and Ellie's just there with just Joel as they leave. And as she like stabs him in the neck with the golf club, where in the game she hits him with the golf club in the head and his brain starts to gush out and blood starts to spurt. But in the show, the tip of the golf club has already broken from her beating him multiple times with it, and that's why she's punching him, and then uses the broken tipped golf club and the rest of the shaft to stab him in the neck and kill him. And oh my god, and then Ellie's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you! I'm gonna fucking kill all of you! And man, he kicks her in the sternum and breaks her friggin' sternum maybe, and like she's like, you can barely breathe, kicked all the wind out of her chest. And then as they leave, we see Ellie crawls over to his body, pulls the golf club out of his neck, and then just lays on top of him, even though he's all bloody and shit, puts her face on his face. And then we cut from a shot of them like with the broken golf club on the ground and dead Joel, and she's laying on top of him like trying to hold his hand, but he's dead and just numb and cold at this moment. And we pull up from up top, and it is a devastating scene. It really is. So then we pull away from that shot of Ellie and Joel laying on the ground, and it's much sadder from the game, although I think the scene is better in the game, but it makes me more angry in the game. But it's so sad in the show to watch this scene, and then the music that plays, because we end on the Ellie from the game, Ashley Johnson, singing Through the Valley of the Shadow of Death, and that's the title of the episode, Through the Valley. And the song Through the Valley was used as a teaser to announce that The Last of Us Part 2 was coming, and I believe this is the teaser here.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, 'cause I know I'll kill my enemies when they come. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me forevermore. Said I walk beside the still waters and they restore my soul. No, I can't walk on the path of the right, 'cause I'm wrong.
Oh, so that teaser for the game where like Joel's walking through a house with just a bunch of dead bodies in it, and then he walks up to Ellie holding the guitar and playing, and that was like a big moment of a reveal for the second game, because in the first game he promised that he would teach her guitar. So in the second game, and it's actually a scene that's not in the game at all, it's just for a teaser to tease this moment. But I just thought it was so heartbreaking that the Ellie from the game and Ashley Johnson, who is Ellie's mother in the show, so this like ghostly mother of Ellie and the Ellie of Ellie's past from the game, is singing Through the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And it's like, she's got a beautiful voice, and it's heartbreaking as they're singing this song as we close on Abby's friends walking out. And you're just like, oh, these fucks, I can't stand them, but we'll see more of them, and I'm sure Ellie's not going to let them live, and her promise of they're all going to die is probably going to come true. But as Abby and her friends are leaving Jackson, Jesse rides up to the mansion, and we cut to Tommy in the aftermath of Jackson, and a guy got bit by an infected, and he's handing a gun to someone else in town to put him out of his misery because he doesn't want to become an infected, right? So this is like the shot that they cut to of Jackson, and then we see Tommy, you know, sees that members of the community are killed and buildings are burning and thousands of dead infected are all over the streets, and Maria is still alive, and Tommy sees that she's still alive and almost collapses in her arms as he sees her, and you're like, oh, the heartbreak, right? Oh, they're killing me. But then Jesse has got Dina and Ellie, and they're riding back to Jackson, and Ellie's in so much pain as she's like reeled over, holding her chest, and then she's turning around to see what Jesse's horse is dragging, and Jesse's horse is dragging Joel's body back to Jackson as the music goes silence, as we all need a moment of silence for Joel. Rest in peace. As we fade to black in the credits, and you're just like, that's it? Joel's dead? And like they wanted to make sure that like, oh, he's not going to heal up from this. He's in a body bag getting dragged through the snow. Like, he's dead. Fuck. And then that's where the credits roll. And we have a little teaser for next week that looks really good, but also really sad. I also have the shot of Ellie walking, in them like walking out in Joel's last moments.
And I feel no evil because I'm blind. Oh, restore my soul. But I know when I die, my soul stands.
When I die, my soul is damned. And that's like where we end with silence on this episode. And then the preview for next week is pretty insane and pretty quick, so let's get into that.
It's okay. You're in the hospital.
I know their names, and I know where they're from.
The girl with the braid.
Abby.
So Ellie wakes up in the hospital. What? The screaming. Joel's funeral we might see. We got Joel Miller's headstone from the game. I can't believe they were filming in a blizzard, and like you could tell the real snow and like the frozen mustache of Pedro Pascal. Like that shit, they can't do that with makeup. That was real cold, real snow. Katlin Deever as Abby really crushes it. I hope she doesn't get heat for killing Joel on the internet, but ooh, Abby, what a devastating character. And then the only thing in the game that I thought for sure would have been better if they included it in the show would have been if it was Dina and Ellie in that 7-Eleven weed den of Eugene's weed den. In the game, it's when Dina and Ellie have their first like sex scene and like first like, you know, real moment together, and that got cut. So hopefully this comes in a later situation and maybe a new situation in the game or in the show. But this was one of my favorite scenes from the game, and I was bummed that they didn't get it. At least they didn't try and do it with Ellie and Jesse and try and make her straight. Like, nah, she likes women. But here's Pedro, Katlin, and Bella all on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, and the three of them. Oh, and the interviews have been killing me now that Pedro could talk about him being dead. Oh, God, it's terrible. But next week, Ellie's in the hospital. Dina knows their names. She knows the WLF logo, and it looks like Ellie's going to be out for revenge. So comment below your thoughts on this episode. Are you excited for next week? Have you ever played The Last of Us games? Comment all these things down below, or you can message me on my other social medias. Links down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for coming on by. My name is Big Cam. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss next week's Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 breakdown. And I will see you beautiful people in the next video. Peace!